Well, now we're at the point where we can do some checking and tuning on the gears. I already know the front derailleur's acting wonky. It doesn't even want to get close to shifting down to the small ring. Gears are usually one of the main issues with any bike that needs a tune-up. First thing I'm going to check is rear derailleur hanger alignment visually, just to see how nasty it could possibly be right out of the gate here. This is a replaceable dropout hanger for the derailleur. They're replaceable because back in the day they weren't replaceable, and you'd wipe out and smash your derailleur and rip your frame apart, and then you'd have to get it welded back on or get a new frame. Big pain in the butt. So this is now made out of aluminum. It's designed to break if such an impact occurs, and to then not damage the rest of your frame. So since it's designed to break, it's not all that strong. When you're pedaling a bicycle, you can push out hundreds and hundreds of pounds of pressure into the pedals, especially if you're nasty with your bike. Given the drivetrain design, when you go to shift, that pressure is transferred right here to this thin little piece of aluminum. So that can bend in and twist just under normal shifting circumstances. I always also check to see if the outside of the derailleur has any skid damage from a crash, because then that's an indicator, and there is some right here. That's an indicator that derailleur hanger is probably out of alignment. It's probably been pushed in. First place to start. You don't even mess around. You can take the trusty three-way and try to manually, visually check its alignment. Everything should kind of in the end be parallel to the front. But I've got this tool. This was the cheapest derailleur hanger liner I could find, and it works good enough. It's not a precise adjustment anyway. But so what we're going to do is undo this derailleur bolt. There we go. Pitfall for doing this is if your rim is warped and needs to be straightened, you need to do that first. And it was also a pitfall for setting up the brakes if the rim was warped. But the rims are straight. There's no wobble, no up and down hops. So I already knew that was okay. I forgot to mention it earlier. We're still going to go through probably and check spoke tension, make sure the bike's okay. It seems like okay so far, but the rim's got to be straight. Otherwise, this will not adjust correctly. Gently, without cross threading, tighten the tool into the hanger. Okay. Now I got room here, and this has room to slide back and forth. So I'm just going to start by moving this up and pushing to the rim. Now what's going to happen, since I already know this thing's bent because I can see it with my eye, this tool has a bit of play in it anyway, so that's good there. Now I'm just going to lower this and check the opposite end of the wheel and look at the difference. That's like an inch almost. Okay, so confirmed, the derailleur hanger has been bent that way. This, when it's all aligned, jeepers, should hit the rim the same. Shouldn't have to be adjusted all the way around. So what I'm going to do, I got the tool in there, it's tight. Gently push the tool to bend that derailleur hanger back the direction I want it. If you reef on this, you will just snap that hanger. Okay, so we moved a bit there, so I'm going to reset my tool. Okay, take a quick check. Oh, look, we're close. Went over halfway there. So just a bit more. Okay. Okay, that's pretty good. Before I go too far getting one direction set, I'm going to check. Say the bike was on the ground and parallel with the ground. I'm going to check that. And that's pretty good. So we're doing okay. Yeah, not bad. Okay. Just a bit more. Okay, that looks good. Slightly out this way, and like I said, these bend in and twist like that. So I'm just gonna slightly away from the back here. So I'm gonna bend it just a bit. Oh, that might have been too much. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's good. It's not a precise adjustment. Like, if you get anywhere within the ballpark of that, the bike will still shift. It probably shifted okay before I did that. But if you leave this bent, and there's another crash or something, it gets bent more, it just increases your odds that the chain is going to get shifted into the spokes and damage spokes later, and it's like a totally preventable situation. Put the derailleur back in. Now this can get a little tricky. There's the B tension stop, which is the body tension. There's a spring in here. So B tension screw, B tension stop, body bolt, and that hole that it goes into. So you got to kind of tweak the derailleur back a bit to clear that B tension stop. And pay attention to not cross threading. Okay. Now we're on that stop. Good. So I can tighten it down. Okay, now, I don't know if you can see the difference from how it was to how it is, but this is looking much straighter. Alright, now, since we are speaking about the B tension, we're going to check that coming up here. First thing I want to do is I want to check the derailleur limit screws. These two screws, one is for high gear and one is for low gear. High gear, the H, is always to the outside. So the small ring in the back, big ring in the front. They're not always marked. What do you do? This one is marked. This is the high, there's an H, and this is the low, there's an L. So I know high is to the outside and low is to the inside. So what I'm going to do I'm going to get my screwdriver in anticipation here. Where's the screwdriver I want? Oh, I was using it earlier for something else. There we go. Phillips. Now, I'm going to pedal the bike and gently push on the derailleur body to get the chain up to the biggest gear. Now, I'm going to hold it there and take a look and see how my chain is coming off of that gear. And I'm pushing it all the way up against the stop. And that's slightly to the inside. Which is good, because if your chain, if that low screw is too loose, when you shift, your derailleur will be able to go far enough to take that chain right off the top of the gears there, damage your spokes, get jammed in there, and that sucks. So this pulley is almost directly below that big gear. It's slightly to the inside. I'm going to leave that for now. I'm probably going to slightly loosen that, but we'll see if I have to. And then I'm going to pedal again so it comes all the way down. And I'm going to grab this part of the derailleur and pull this way while I'm gently pedaling and see if I can pull that chain off the bottom. Take a look. Okay, this top pulley is slightly to the outside of that small gear. I might tighten that. We'll see how it goes. Of course, since the derailleur hanger was already bent, all this stuff probably almost lined up perfectly before. So that's okay. So now I can at least work with the gears, knowing that the chain's not, as I'm adjusting cable tension, that the chain's gonna go way off into the rim and I'm gonna damage the bike or something, right? That basic check. Now the B tension screw, the body tension screw, is largely ignored or not even understood, I guess, by the vast majority of mechanics or assemblers or people. Now ideally I want this chain in the big ring in the back and the small ring in the front, and we've got an issue with this front derailleur. Is there a barrel adjuster? Trying to loosen the cable tension with the barrel adjuster here so it comes down. Okay, there, it's down. Okay, so now, what this B tension screw does, and it's always the one closest to the main body pivot that's attached to the derailleur hanger. It's right at the top, pushes down onto the derailleur hanger, and if I screw that in, this entire derailleur is going to move in this direction. If I loosen it, the entire derailleur is going to move in that direction. What you want is this top pulley to be as close to those teeth on the big chain ring as possible, you know, within reason. Like you got quite a bit of wiggle room there without touching. Like if I push up, it's totally rubbing. Okay? Now, if that is screwed in too much and the derailleur comes back this way, well, what you've effectively done is now you only have traction on your gears from here to here. So there's that little amount of space that's taking your hundreds of pounds of pressure to drive your bike forward. You want as much of a wrap as possible, always. It improves the shifting, reduces wear and tear on the gears and the chain, just makes it much more pleasant. And like I say, this is hardly ever paid attention to. So, what I'm going to do is shift the front Big ring. Get it back down in a little ring. Come on. Okay. That's where it naturally wants to be because I was fussing with it. Take a look. Like, that's pretty good. It's actually, I'm going to tighten that a bit because I can feel it just contacting those gears. So close. Okay, there we go. Okay. Now I'm going to move into the indexing. So I'm going to drop the chain back down to the smallest cog. I'm going to give the shifter one click. What happens? It doesn't shift because the cable tension is too loose. So I've got room on this barrel adjuster for cable tension, plenty of room to tighten that cable tension up a bit. I could use the pinch bolt, but there's so much room here that that'll be acceptable. Okay, one click. Oh, shift, one more click. One more click. Keep going. Oh, it's a little sluggish. Okay, now the big test is how does it come back down? Because it's up to the derailleur itself to pull that chain back down with the spring inside there. It's up to you with your fingers to get the chain up. So we'll see if this is a good enough balance. Now, what I'm going to do is leave it in about a middle-ish gear. Just come back, take a look. Let me get another light so I might be able to show you better. Okay. Now I'm going to take a look at this chain coming off this gear, and we can see how close the chain is going into the derailleur. Is it going to rub on this gear? Is it evenly spaced along that gear all the way around? That's pretty close. If it was too loose, it would be over here. If it was too tight, it would be over there. So that is a good place to be starting. Now, just continue to make sure that it comes all the way back down. Look at that. Okay, now I'm going to shift it up, put it into the middle-ish gear. Take a look. Okay. Yeah, no, that looks good. I already know from my experience that I'm probably not going to do much to adjust this cable tension more. After the test ride, we'll see if there was a minor adjustment, and it would be like a whoop. That's about it. But we'll see how it goes. That's 98% of the way there. Now, the front derailleur. What the heck is going on here? I'm going to just pretend that I'm installing it. I'm going to loosen this pinch bolt. Okay, and down it went. Okay, now front derailleurs, for some reason, are a complete enigma to a lot of assemblers and mechanics. There is a general, like some basic rules. The front derailleur is profiled. Where's my light? The front derailleur cage is profiled in certain areas. It's bent in here. It's bent out here. You know, like, that's all designed for, depending on where the chain is in the back, to not be rubbing on any part of the front derailleur cage, depending what gear it is in the front, and also help push the chain off or onto gears all at the same time. The first thing you need to do is make sure that the outer plane, draw a line from the front of the derailleur to the back of the derailleur, an imaginary straight line. Some derailleurs are really got a whole bunch, like cheaper derailleurs have a whole bunch of weird bends in them. So you have to imagine a straight line. You want that to be parallel to your chain rings. The other thing you need to pay attention to is height. The derailleur cage should never touch the teeth. Also, the back of the cage here should never touch, an inner chain ring. So, if anything, this derailleur is too high. It's very close to the correct height, but it could be lowered. I'm not going to do it because it's so close, unless there's a problem with how it shifts and if there's any rubbing later on. Because the height of the derailleur affects how the chain is interacting with the profiles in the derailleur cage. Now, a tip, if you are adjusting your derailleur's height and orientation, there's the clamp bolt on the seat tube. Now, what happens when you tighten, you loosen that off, you get your derailleur set up for the proper height. You're going to want to undo the pinch bolt at that point so you're not fighting it. Get it all parallel, and then you go to tighten it down. What happens is, it's not this part of the clamp that's tightening into the rest of the derailleur cage. It's the entire derailleur cage that's tightening into this part of the clamp. So you set up perfectly parallel, you tighten that down, and then suddenly it's no longer parallel. The tail of the derailleur is shooting in. It's a guess and check, loosen, tighten situation. So just start off with the tail of the front derailleur slightly out, and then as you slightly, like a couple mils. So it's different on every frickin' tune, right? Guess and check. Usually takes about 3 times for me to get it to how I like it. Yeah, but that one's okay. So we're gonna make sure our shifter is backed off. Okay, pull this cable back into where it goes. Cable routing into front derailleurs can also be a significant issue. This one's simple. There's no cams or anything on here. There's a groove in here. It's fairly obvious where the cable goes. Some front derailleurs have secret space age technology in them to enhance performance. And 1 degree, like if I put this, even on this bike, if I put this cable on this side of the pinch bolt, it's not going to shift worth the crap. 1 degree of difference from angle of attack of this cable to the rest of the derailleur will make it or break it. So take a look to see how things are before they start, and you can always Dr. Google it to see if it's set up correctly in the first place. So that's good. That's tight. Just kind of get that a bit out of the way there. Alright. Now, we're going to check the front derailleur limit screws. General rule of thumb, I'm just going to assume that the one on the outside is the high and the one on the inside is the low. Not always the case. We will find out. So, while it's down in the bottom chain ring, I'm just going to tighten the inside one. See if it moves. Yep, see? I was right. Okay, so now what we're going to do, get this rear gear all the way up into the big cog. Now we want this as tight as possible so that there's no rubbing on the derailleur cage, and that's good. But it also needs to be as loose enough that it's going to move far enough to get the chain off the big chain ring. So it's all a balancing act. Once you start with a parallel derailleur at the proper height, all the rest of the stuff works out as you go, all by itself typically. Okay, shift the rear down to the small cog, shift the front. Okay, so now I can hear that rubbing on this part of the cage. That's telling me my cable tension is probably needs to be a bit tighter, but we'll see how it goes. Shift up. Oh, it doesn't even shift up. Why? Because this screw is too tight. Or not. Is it hitting something? Like, what the hell is going on? I wonder if something's up with this shifter. Hasn't taken any beats. Oh, you know what? It wasn't shifted all the way down. Dang it. Readjust that cable tension. Look at all this. What wrong one? So right out of the box, or right out of the assembly of this bike, with those screws not being adjusted, this front derailleur is probably never even looked at all. It's probably the first time it's ever getting set up the way it should have been. This cable tension was that loose, so it was not going to work. I got like over a centimeter of more cable pulled through there now. Okay, now we'll see if it shifts up. Where's that screwdriver? There we go. Now I got to adjust the stop so that the chain comes up. It's good, I don't really hear any rubbing. Now what I'm going to do is pay attention while I'm shifting to see if that chain wants to walk off and then go back, because you don't want your chain coming off the outside of the front chain rings either. So push all the way. Where's my light? Hold it, hold it. That's pretty good. It's not coming like that, you know. So a lot of times that's how it goes, and then you tighten that stop or that high setting screw and it pushes it back. But this one's good. Now I'm just going to run through that without piss farting around a couple times just to make sure. Okay, so that works good. Okay, so now check for chain rub. Okay. So it's hesitating on getting into the big in the back, while it's in the big in the back, into the big on the front. That I'm not so concerned about, because that's a gear you should never be in to begin with. Test ride will tell me if there's anything minor I have to do there. I'm just going to increase the cable tension a tad. So there's where the housing goes into the frame here, there's a barrel adjuster. Just tighten that like not even a quarter turn. Okay. Now, with road bikes, in the shifter, there is a micro adjustment. So if I go on the shifter, one click, there's like going to be 4 clicks, because depending where your chain is in the back gears, it may or may not be rubbing on the front derailleur cage. Some of these clicks in the shifter are for micro adjustments, and it moves the derailleur just a tad, so the rubbing stops, and you don't wear through your derailleur cage with your chain eventually. So that's just one of those things that and that I need to ride it to check that ultimately, because there was one click and it didn't move, another click and it moved. Okay, and I think I'm probably going to end up putting some lube as good as I can in this front shifter, because it's sticky and it's not behaving as smooth as it should be. But that is 90% of the way there. It's like a brand new bike.